It's finally here. We have the summer update for Phobies 1.10, patch 1.10, Rockin' Horrors. This is a very exciting update. We have new maps, we have new Phobies, we have a new exclusive phobia, and we're going to be breaking them all down now that we actually have the statistics for the Phobies with the actual cards. And of course, we're going to take a peek at some of the maps too. Now, as we jump into everything, I, of course, have to let everybody know that I am part of the content affiliate program. That means that the Phobies team does, in fact, give me coffee, which is going to provide the later pack opening. You're going to have to stay tuned for that one. Check out the other video. But with all of that out of the way, let's get to it. So here we go. This is going to be in rough alphabetical order, if I recall correctly. Yeah, I think that's the case. So we're just kind of going in that order, not because I'm super excited. We're going to have the client in the background so that way I can pull up comparison Phobies. And we're just going to talk about what I think of my hot, freshest takes now that we have the official Phobies. So we're going to be leading off here with Ash, who looks pretty sick. And if you have the opportunity to see it, like you can look at the trailer, or if you find somebody who has it, it looks pretty cool. That's about the only, but yeah, Ace. Sorry, chat's correcting me. Ash is the next one. Ace, him looking cool is about the only positive thing that I can say about this. Now, it's a recolor, sort of. It obviously has some accoutrements added, notably the Vam braces, I guess, there with the spikes, which, again, adds to the coolness factor. But what is Ace? It is an 8-cost mechanical phobie. 2,600 health, 2 move, melee, 700 damage, and 700 electrical damage. My initial thought, and I think I said this verbatim in Discord once everything was discovered, is why. Like, I legitimately don't understand what the purpose of this phobia is. I have no idea. It costs 8. It's a melee. The numbers obviously line up with Fish Tank. Fish Tank, I'm pretty sure, is 700 damage baseline. So it's like, oh, it's Fish Tank, but electrical, which it obviously is Fish Tank. But it's just kind of like, but why? You know the Ryan Reynolds meme? It's from Scrubs, where he's just like, he's got the scrubs on, and he takes the mask, and he's, but why? Fish Tank deals 600. It only does 600. Oh my God, no, it does 700, doesn't it? I'm not going to look it up. I'm going to get distracted. We're not going to look up Fish Tank. I don't care. I don't care enough. But anyway, Ace is just a Juice Thunder Rocks with the ability to fend off normal Phobies. Kind of, but he costs 8. In what world are you like, is there a reality where you would, Ace is one of these that I'm missing, by the way, obviously. There's a world where you go, I want Fish Tank, but electrical damage. Okay. But how often are you going to be in that world when you'd rather just put Boss on the board? Or just 2 other Phobies? I don't know. It just feels like I guess the only other positive thing you could say is this adds redundancy to the roster, which I know a lot of people don't like to hear, but the reality is because of the economic problems within the Phobies game, and we've beaten those to death, so we're not going to go over it here, but you can check my other videos for that. The fact is that it can be very challenging to acquire new Phobies, and if that's true, then it's good to have some level of redundancy, especially since this is an uncommon, so that people who aren't getting, they have a chance to fulfill a role within their roster, notably electrical damage. And this is a big tanky boy. So, sure. Other than that, Ace is kind of forgettable for me, so it is what it is. Next up, we actually do have Ash, and this is also going to come back to the redundancy argument. This is a rare phobia. Ash is a 4-cost, 1,300 health monster. 2 move, 1 range, 300 damage, 400 poison damage, and a friend in need. What does a friend in need do? It is a warm-up of 1, a cooldown of 1, and you pull a friendly unit. We saw this in the trailer where I believe it was pulling a Razormouth, which is like, I don't know what world you need to pull a Razormouth, but there are some wacky games out there. I'm confident somebody will submit a game where pulling the Razormouth allowed for probably a boop or something like that to happen, like a chain boop. But anyway, how useful is Ash? Well, before we get to that, I do have to say it looks pretty sweet. Ash and Ace definitely sound like 80s band member names. Like, that sounds pretty cool. Ash feels weird to me. I think Ash is a little weird, and the only reason it's weird is because Phantom and Shove Shark, and yes, Phantom got nerfed, but because Phantom and Shove Shark already exist, Ash feels redundant. Sounding familiar? Maybe even redundant? Because, just as we were talking about with Ace, this allows people another chance to get one of these phobies and have it on your roster for this ability. Beyond that, I mean, it does have significant poison damage. 400 is a fairly high amount. We've talked at length about how poor poison is generally, especially single target like this, because once Ash goes in, that spider is getting squashed. It's just not. So, chat's pointing out, I feel like Shove Shark does a similar thing for less. Yes, but there are scenarios where you need to advance in for reasons, and you want to be able to pull. I think what could have been done for Ash to really differentiate it, but then this would have obsoleted Miss Moffat, is be able to pull either. So maybe this should have been a 6 cost, and then you could pull friendly or enemy phobies. Maybe it'd have to be 7 then, something like that. But yeah, the hit and run strat also works because it allows you to pull something in, or push in with something and then pull them out, but you could kind of do that with Shove Shark anyway. There's very narrow use cases where extending Ash in to pull something towards it, presumably towards your enemy, is worth it. Most of the time, you'll be able to boop with Shove Shark, keep Shove Shark safe because it's already by definition behind. Like, push the other guy forward, and then that guy can walk away. I'm not really seeing where this fits in. My problem with her is that she's rare when Shove Shark is uncommon. I feel like she should have been uncommon just for that. I don't agree with that. So I always say this, and this is worth repeating because this will end up on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Power level should not drive rarity. Now, if we're making the comparison that it's too similar of an ability and it's just like, oh, well, you cost one more and basically do the same thing, I kind of understand it. But I don't want the argument to be, oh, well, Shove Shark does this and this is a weaker version, so Shove Shark should be rare and this should be uncommon or something like that. I'm not sure. It could combo with Shove Shark, but now you're spending 7 keys to do what Phantom does in 5. Which, again, maybe you don't have Phantom. I'll be honest, this is going to be one that's going to go into the prove it to me category. I will say that similar to Graylien. So we already had the existence of Attractor. We already had Attractor was in the release with Graylien in full disclosure, but we had Attractor, we had Moffat, we had Octonauty at the time of full disclosure's release. And obviously we have other pullers. We didn't know about Akira at the time, blah, blah, blah. But the point is that everybody, myself included, looked at Graylien, except for maybe Urkavina, because Urk loves Graylien. But everybody looked at Graylien and said, well, why does Graylien even exist? What is the point of this thing? And what ended up happening is there are some edge case scenarios where you can leverage Graylien that you wouldn't have been able to leverage other pullers necessarily, or create a scenario that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. The slight variance and nuance in Ash's ability compared to the other phobies, I think is valuable. I think that makes sense, and it is useful to have it within the cast, even it isn't necessarily, setting the world on fire because, oh, this is the first time we got ally displacement besides Akira, because it's obviously not. Now, that being said, it still comes with the caveat of, the Phobies economy needs help. It's in a very, very rough spot. So padding things out with the redundancy may not make people as thrilled as it possibly should. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. I didn't want to say that Shove Shark should be rare. I think it's weird to put something so similar in practice a different rarity. It's not as stupid as putting Giggles or Slayer as rare, though. There are other reasons for rarity. I think the main reason, and the main reason that things should be rare, is due to complexity, not due to power level necessarily. I mean, obviously they can't put all the powerful phobies at common because then everybody gets them and then there's nothing to be excited about necessarily. But putting complexity at rare means that newer players will see it less often and therefore not get as easily overwhelmed or confused. And while I agree Giggles or Slayer is something that, well, how complex is that? I could see something like this being a little more complex than Shove Shark, because pushing your guy forward versus pulling your guy forward has different implications. Are they that dramatically different? Maybe. But yeah, bottom line is Ash is a wait and see. All right, next up is Benny, and this is absolutely one that we need to compare. What do we need to compare it against? Well, the obvious. And that's this guy, which we're going to have to switch to this side so you can see it better. So we do have, unfortunately, my Phobies, this Stabby is level 15. So the numbers don't compare all that well. But the reality is that Benny does more damage than Stabby. Stabby has 375 damage baseline at level 1. Bowmangles does 420. So Benny, damage-wise, falls in the middle. It's a 3-cost undead rare turret, we'll say. 1200 health, 1 move, 2 range, and it resurrects at 300 damage. So I initially don't like Benny. Chat saying Benny has 250 less health than Stabby and 350 less health than Bowmangles. Yes. So there is a penalty as far as the economic cost of costing a phobia. You want a 3-cost undead turret with Resurrect, that implies that you have to take a hit on certain statistics. And clearly the team wanted to put the damage between Bowmangles and Stabby, which begs the question, when we inevitably get the monster turret, is that going to be bigger than Giggles, or is it going to be smaller than Stabby? And when I say monster turret, I'm not talking about Unicorn. I'm talking about a hypothetical 3-cost. But anyway. So I did not initially like Benny. I think the stats are interesting. I like the 400 damage. 400 is where things really start to matter, but Stabby has lower damage, air quotes, because it's dimensional and it has its voodoo. That pushes Stabby's damage higher than a lot of other things, even potentially Bowmangles, depending on how the scenario plays out. You don't control the damage as much, but you put out more damage because things have to hit you and then remove it from the board. Benny, by contrast, is not going to soak as much damage, and while it hypothetically forces your opponent to pull something out of position, that's going to be a droney or it's going to be a 1-key. I don't know. I could see Benny being valuable. There's a world in which Benny is very playable and perfectly fine. I'm not sure if it's this one yet. I kind of have to see it. And unfortunately for Benny, as compared to, well, at least Ash, Ash could hypothetically be used at any level because you're using it for the ability. Ace, you're using for numbers. Benny, you're using for numbers. So the reality is, when we do the pack opening, if I open Benny, I'm probably not using it for another 6 months. It's a dummy who punches stuff, or shoots stuff in this case. I think Benny's pretty cool. I think the design is pretty cool. Although it definitely, like the Ace and Ash, like Ace looks like rock theme. Ash doesn't really, but has a cool name. Benny doesn't feel like it fits the theme. So this very much felt like it was a phobia that the team wanted to create. Like this is something they wanted to do, and this was the next release, so Benny got included. As compared to the other ones, like I said, Ace, I'm not thrilled about. Ash, I think, just gets completely overshadowed by Shove Shark in 99.9% of the scenarios. Benny, I think, is going to be overshadowed by Stabby and Bowmangles. Now, having another turret, again, maybe we'll get more Conductor-esque phobies that have more synergy with Undead as compared to other stuff. I don't know. But as of right now, I'm not super thrilled. It seems okay. It seems okay, but until I see it in action, it kind of, I mean, we could do the math. It's Phobies numbers, so the health and the damage and stuff like that, grow at 3% per level. So if somebody wants to sit there, you know, I've thrown it in an Excel spreadsheet before. It takes all of 10 seconds to do it. But you could calculate out what's Benny going to look like at level 15 and then do a more direct comparison to this Stabby. But for the most part, I feel like Benny's he's gonna get poked a couple times, and then he's just gonna get annihilated, and then like a snowball run in, step on him, and step out. Whereas I think Stabby produces more value because of the dimensional damage and its voodoo, and Bowmangles pours out more damage and is significantly tankier. So I don't know. I really want to like Benny. I think the animation looks sweet. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, next up is Omega. This is one to get excited about, potentially get up in arms about. We were debating about what this would cost. I was predicting about 7, so I was a little bit under here. 8 cost, 1400 health, 2 move, no attack. This is the end. Very fitting for a phobie named Omega. 1 warm-up with a 4-turn cooldown, 3 range, plus 250 damage, buffs all attacks. And as you saw in the trailer, this will buff your enemy's attacks as well. Obviously, this is a recolor of not that guy. Not that guy. This guy. A brony. So, as chat's pointing out, this might be broken on release. I don't know. This is a phobie that you possibly could use immediately. It's unlikely because, again, it's absolutely a numbers-based phobie. So a 250 damage buff for 8 keys is not great, but is a 700 damage buff good for 8 keys? Because this is probably 700 damage, or 750 damage, excuse me. Because you are likely hitting 3 of your opponent's phobies, or your phobies, maybe one of your opponents, and then you're just going to annihilate them on paper. This is a great phobie that allows you to try and break a defense. It allows the aggressor, because phobies typically, as it's structured, this phobie allows you to overcome defender's advantage. Because it lets you set up for something, and odds are you can set this up where it never even touches your opponent's phobies. And then you can go in and then hopefully pick more than one thing off. Because that's the biggest thing when you're trying to advance. You can't go in because your opponent's going to get more counterattacks. Well, this kind of gives you, air quotes, free attacks thanks to the buff. And if you have a bunch of 3 rangers, it's possible that they can be completely out of range and do something nasty. Now, I anticipate this is primarily going to get paired with stuff like Akira. Imagine you put Omega in the middle of your team. You buff your whole team. You walk Akira up. You pull your team towards them and their team towards you, and then you just crush them. Like, that's what I anticipate is going to happen. We'll have to see, because 8 keys is an enormous investment. The aforementioned Akira play costs 17. But like 17 on a big map is not unreasonable. I don't think this is coming out all that often on small maps, but I'm sure we'll see some plays. This naturally earns the ultra rare status. I'm glad that they went with 250 rather than 300, echoing the Gonzo nerf. This one's going to be interesting. It's not interesting like, well, some of the other ones that we already looked at. Like, this is fine. This seems like Omega has a lot of potential. We'll see how it goes. Chat's saying I hate it because of how it power crept Edgar. Kind of, but they're 2 different phobies. They do... I don't want to say they do 2 completely different things, but they do 2 different things. I argued the buff down to 250. I think it was necessary. I think Edgar needs a buff, personally. But I think Omega, hypothetically, could have been a 200 damage buff. And it would still be very good. I don't know. We'll have to see. 8 keys is a lot of keys. But your opponent must respect this. They can't ignore it. You will... This will be the end. This will be the end. So we'll have to see how Omega shapes up. But, yeah. Omega looks pretty sick. Omega looks pretty sick. All right, next up we have Sabian, the symbol of justice. I love this. I wish every phobie had flavor text. I wish every phobie had flavor text because this is chef's kiss. I love it. This is beautiful. I don't know who on the team came up with this, but it makes me very happy. So Sabian's like this buzzsaw flying saucer thing. I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be, but like it's pretty cool. So Sabian's a 6-cost mech. It's 2,300 health, 2 move, melee with 500 damage. So 500 damage, I mentioned it earlier. 400, I think, is our producer Glenn named this one. Nice. This one, 500 damage is above the breakpoint to me where damage really starts to matter. So 400 is right where I start caring kind of thing. Stabby is kind of an exception because of its voodoo and being dimensional. But for most other phobies, you need, range phobies especially, you want 400 damage. Think Kleptos, that sort of thing. Klepto, Crushmore, etc. However, this has 500 damage, which I love because it is a melee phobie, and it's an AoE phobie. I like seeing that the team is exploring more with the AoE effect for melees to try and make up for some of this, because melees do need some help. And that's not, oh, well, the team just hates melee. The way the game works, melee's just at a disadvantage. It's just the way that the game functions. And there's no real way to solve that, realistically. From a systemic perspective, you'd have to do like a big overhaul. This is a simple way to do it. Just push the stats a little bit more. It's flying, so this can come in from some weird angles and get stuff done. I think this has some potential. I'm picturing there's a lot of maps where your opponent has to cluster, and there's realistically no way for them to get away from having to have 2, 3 phobies together. Probably never going to hit 4, but say there's 2 or 3 phobies, and you just light them all up. And with 2,300 health baseline, it's pretty tanky. So there's a world in which this thing survives through the onslaught because your opponent, you know, like you go in with this and follow it up. That's just a lot of hit points to have to burn down. I think this thing's pretty cool. Unfortunately, the coolest looking phobies in the updated, and we'll get there. I love Sabian's design, yeah. It can go on walls and hit all phobies around the wall, yes. It has the same stats as Goon. I think Goon has 2,600 health, but Goon also can't fly. Sabian has 600 health less than Blasto. This guy seems pretty cool. This guy seems pretty cool. And for a vanilla phobie, I mean, yes, it has flying, but like, it doesn't have any powers. It just does something cool. Oh, Goon only has 23 baseline? It's been a while. It's been a while. But yeah, I like this guy. I think he has potential. I'm looking forward to him. Also uncommon. All right, so we get our exclusive phobie. This is Skinwalker, and there's a lot to say about this guy. First of all, this guy looks sick, especially when he goes into Undying Rage mode, which we saw in the trailer, but it was a blink of an eye, and you couldn't really tell what was happening. So baseline, our ultra rare here is a 7-cost, dimensional, 1,500 health, 2 move. It's melee, 400 damage, and then, of course, has Undying Rage, which has a 1-turn warm-up, 4-turn cooldown that runs for 3 turns. Now, there's more on that momentarily. It now has infinite health. I'll explain that also. It does AoE damage. It does 700 baseline damage, and it life leeches for 40% of the damage. Drops out of Undying Rage in the same way that Gargles does. So Gargles petrifies, and then on your opponent's turn, it will drop out. This guy seems pretty solid. 700 damage is obviously a huge amount. The infinite health thing, as I understand it, and chat, maybe you'll have to correct me on this then. As I understand it, it can still take damage, but it will, if it goes to 1 health, it just stays at 1 health. It can't actually croak. So This seems actually pretty playable. Since it can move, you can run things down and you can still continue to pressure the heart, for example, which is where I imagine, and this, for that purpose, for explicitly that purpose, I think is going to be really useful because it's going to allow for these heart pushes with a very, very powerful phobie to get on the heart and you can't dislodge it. To be honest, I think you don't activate it until it is literally on the heart and your opponent's ready to defend, unless the math works out that you can actually kill the heart. You know, like if there's 700 damage right now, will let you kill them, you do it. Otherwise, you wait because then you don't have to worry about them actually trying to take it down. Plus the life leech and everything. This seems pretty interesting. And whoever said it in chat earlier, I saw it. It feels like the whole budget was going to this phobie. I mean, from the art design and the ability, all of this is pretty cool. All of this is really cool. I'm excited for this guy. He won't be available in packs yet because it is the exclusive offer phobie, but we'll get there eventually. Ice Cream and Yeti near heart, gonna laugh hard at Skinwalker. That assumes that you can even get at it. So the first map that I thought of when I saw Skinwalker was this might sting a little. And then like just running it to either the top or the bottom respectively. And then you just stuff the rest of it. He could both heart rush and act as a desperation method. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because while I agree this guy is not unbeatable. Cat Mad playing Frosty on it. Well, I was going to say Kuro. Kuro's been on the Frosty train lately. There are clearly ways to deal with it, but the reality is that it demands an answer. And if you are utilizing phobies that require your opponent, they have to react to them, and they must react with specific responses, you can then, A, prepare for them, and B, let's be real, on the ladder, sometimes you're just going to win games because they don't have those answers. Imagine Skinwalker paired with Phantom or Shove Shark. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I mean, it took a little bit for Werewolf to get into the mix. This is a higher cost phobie. There is an opportunity cost for putting this guy on the board. He costs 7. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. All right, chat. Next up is Tri-Volta. This is the new version of this guy. So Tri-Volta is a 5-cost mech. Cool to see Werewolf being used a lot recently. Yeah, Werewolf's been getting a lot of play. So Tri-Volta is a 5-cost mech, 1400 health, 2 move, 2 range, 300 damage, and 300 electrical damage with Let's Dance. 1 warm up, 2 cooldown. It has a 1 range AoE. Removes 1 enemy action. So you got to be real close with a fairly fragile phobie, especially in the context of being a mech. So, for example, we have 5-cost mechs in Hevo and Blue Speedola, which are maybe not Repeller, but like these are way tankier. This is range, this is melee. Obviously, these are higher level things, but you can look them up at level 1 to see the context for these. So it's a fairly frail mech. Now, Dial being range disable allows them 2 different things, and I like it. So I talked about this when we were doing the trailer breakdown, and I think it still holds true now that we see the actual phobie. Tri-Volta's Let's Dance is actually a defensive tool. You have to almost look at this phobie in terms of being a Tiny Tim. The reason I say that is, believe it or not, this is the Office meme. Corporate wants you to identify the differences between these 2 pictures. They're the same picture. If you capture enough of your opponent's team with Let's Dance, it's effectively peekaboo. Because they're now doing literally half the damage output because they only have 1 action. If they want to run, they can't get away as far. Like, I'm now explaining the joke sort of thing. Like, this is exactly how it works. But it's peekaboo on all allies? Exactly. I think there's a lot of potential with Tri-Volta. I think it's going to be very difficult to figure it out. 5 is kind of an awkward cost, but this is, again, an initiation tool, in my opinion. It's a 2-mover, so you could shove Shark Tri-Volta square into the middle of their team, and then just like a Blondie power down or something, hey, their damage output is halved. In all likelihood, they'll probably kill Tri-Volta. Like, let's be real. If they want to kill it, they're going to kill it. But if you shove with Tri-Volta and follow up with your entire team, and they stay to hit Tri-Volta, they're getting wiped out. They are just getting bodied. Because they're not going to have the damage output to realistically put up with the offensive that you're hopefully mounting. Obviously, if you send this guy in and you have nothing to back it up, you're in deep doo-doo. But I think there's a lot of potential here. The electrical damage is kind of weird. I get it. They probably didn't want to have a ton of damage output, but you wanted something a little different on there. So I get it. But the damage output is kind of anemic. Seems far better on larger maps. Honestly, I could see this on small maps because I could picture, like, Biff's room. You're probably hitting their entire team except for the jar that they put all the way in the back. I don't think it's ridiculous to do that. Is that better than simply putting a tractor on the board? Well, tractor just got nerfed, but I don't know. We're going to have to see. I see more Tri-Volta than Dial on a small map. I would kind of agree. Like, I think on, you know, Biff's room, I had like 3 maps in mind, and now I can't think of it. I had like any of those Coliseum-style maps where it's, you know, you're... not center stage. What's the other carnival one? With the lava tiles in it. I can picture it in my head. But I can't... Like, it's kind of curving like this, and then there's 2... No, not Coulrophobia. Yeah, I think it's Carousel. I think it might be Carousel. But there's several small maps that are roughly that makeup, right? Where it's... You get boxed in. Like, you're either in the pit or you're outside, right? And I think all of those where you're either in or you're out, you can leverage Tri-Volta to probably turn off a significant portion of their team. Whether you can get all of it is another story, and even if you do, you have to have the team to back it up, because on those maps it's not uncommon to like go turret or double turret. So they may not be able to follow up behind the Tri-Volta push. So you need to tailor your team, which I think is really cool. That a lot of these phobies are showing up. It does highlight the problem with the economics model again, but without digressing, I think it's cool that it's, oh, I put Tri-Volta on the board. That means I need to tailor, like, just tweak all of my choices so that, oh, well, all of those other phobies would be reasonable to put on this map, but they're absolutely killers with Tri-Volta. Whereas if I want to do something else, I'm going to try and anchor the team with a different phobie. And you're trying to do whatever your particular line is. I think it's cool, and it enables other unique strategies to come out just because of the addition of this. This is what I was talking about a while back, and I always use the idea of the Jackalope Queen. Where the addition of a phobie now causes other phobies to get boosted, even if it isn't directly buffing them. Also, he dances, so he's pretty cool. Fair. You would presume he would, right? All right, chat. I think this is the last one for the update. We got Whiskers, who is one of the cooler looking phobies. Again, this guy, I don't really know what he's supposed to be as far as the music theme. But, I mean, he's there. So, Whiskers, what is he? He is a 3-cost undead rare phobie. 850 health, 2 burrow movement, melee, 300 health, and neophobe. Detects enemy traps, and he has trap absorber. I mean, the obvious comparison here is this guy, right? The obvious comparison is Doom Doom. And Doom Doom is not great. Doom Doom is not great. Notably, my Doom Doom has 10 levels. I think Doom Doom starts with the same amount of damage. He might have 350. I don't remember. But he has 10 levels, and he does 90 more damage than Whiskers. But I'll be honest, I'm not thrilled. We were hypothesizing a teleport. We were hypothesizing a whole bunch of stuff. Doom to this point has not really demonstrated that it's very good. I think Whiskers is significantly worse. Partially because it's melee. Partially because it's more frail. So, like... So, Doom is a better Phobie type. It's dimensional. Especially on a low HP Phobie like Whiskers, the Life Leech is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It has low damage, so it matters even less. Then it has an ability where you kind of want to risk putting the Phobie out there, and it's not that tanky. The movement thing is kind of cute. I don't know. This thing could have 300 more HP and still be bad. I think Whiskers should be a 400 damage Phobie with 1200 health. I honestly think that would probably be feasible. Now, I don't know how that... So same as Benny then? Yeah. I think that would be completely reasonable. It's a melee Phobie. It's supposed to be going in. Now, you can't give it too much health because it is a 3 key, right? Like, you don't want to give it 15,000 health. But I think if it had 12... Like, if you look at this and pretend the numbers said 1,200 and 400, are you really balking at that and going like, no, that's too powerful? It could be a little pushed. But I am of the opinion that any melee Phobie, literally any melee Phobie, should be pushed. Literally any melee Phobie should be pushed. Because they inherently have such a problem. Now, I don't mind the anti-trap because I hate traps as a mechanic. Like, don't get me wrong, it's fine that they exist. I just personally don't like them. Like, that's a me problem. But it's tough. It's tough. I think this guy is a really cool design. I think he looks awesome. I mean, he's a creepy monster. I think he looks really cool. But I think this guy leaves much to be desired on the actual Phobie front. Hashtag just me. All right, so we're looking at Toys in the Attic, one of the new maps. One of the new maps. This is a small map, the only small map that we got in the rotation. We actually got multiple new maps. I'm looking forward to seeing all of them. So this is definitely interesting. We only, naturally being a small map, you know what? We're going to Madden this up. We're gonna little John Madden here, chat. All right, so small map. Vault. Vault. Obviously only 2. Do we have any small maps with multiple vaults? I feel like there's 1. But anyway, the hearts are somewhat exposed, which I do like. The hearts are somewhat exposed. So there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can get here with a snowball. And then try and back out to a snowball. You could try and do something like that. If you have a jar on the stem, it covers 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you can get this arc, which is notable because that means you can't cover the center from the stem, which I just shout out to the team for this because there are a lot of early release maps and even some since then, but primarily the first few batches of maps, there were a lot of maps where you had stems that covered multiple objectives. And that's just problematic from a let's get on with it and finish the game perspective. I like how stem doesn't make it impossible to rush. I mean, rushing the heart is a little different, but you can get a 2-to-1 panic point advantage and not immediately be like, oh, I'm locked out, because picture Eternal Monday where you're just staring at each other because nobody can ever go towards the center. You can work a, like, try and use this area. Now, admittedly, there's this, so you do have to be concerned about the poison tiles, but you can use this upper area and try and stay out of range because your opponent can't just annihilate you with a jar. Sentinels could prove problematic for this map, but in order to, like, you can't really cut, well, you could go here. You could cover this point and this point from this spot. And then trying to stage something, because it's 1, 2, 3, it's going to be very difficult to get onto them. But you can't really have, like, a big wall sitting in front. It would have to be mechs. Because otherwise, these things are all exposed and or getting poisoned, which, admittedly, like, the poison may not matter. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Fought here once, played against Repeller, unplayable. You could say that about virtually every small map. Sentinels on any small map are a problem, right? Like, they're super powerful. So the question is will people be able to find a way to dive things? It's interesting that you have these abyss tiles and then these conveyors. I'm not really sure why. To me, this is just another boring open small map. I think the fact that it's open is very relevant. Because the more enclosed the map is, the more problems we have typically. Like, think about Fornacified. I don't mind Fornacified, but a lot of people hate it because you have to sit there clearing the map with a Gravedigger, or Center Stage more recently, you have to have a Gravedigger. Here, there might be other options, although I think Gravedigger maybe breaking this block maybe be valuable. Because then you can push a Sentinel here and cover a huge swath. That's a discussion for later, Master Dark. Fornacified is an extreme. I mean, there are other ones that are problematic. Most of the circus maps are still fun. I disagree. I think there's almost no circus maps that are fun. I think they're all pretty terrible. Carousel, like we said, there's that one. Well, we can talk about the other maps later, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of any of the circus maps. But I think this map has potential. I agree about the issue with Sentinels, but I think that's kind of a universal problem. That's a Sentinel issue. That I don't know that that's a map issue. The big complaint I would level against this map, though, is that this entire thing feels pointless. This entire thing feels pointless. And the reason I say that is you have two options. You have to go and take this point right away because otherwise your guy ends up croaking here. Or you just never engage with it. Poison makes meta mech spam. Yeah, I expect there will be a ton of mechs here, because you can park them on these poison tiles and not care. I don't think you're going to go to the extreme of like a honey bear or even a Charon, because that seems unnecessary. Poison makes it cramp for non-mech. Yes. I think mechs are going to come into play, and I think that's just a symptom of the disease and poison tiles, and I think we need an electrical tile. That's another discussion for another time because it's a longer one, but I think we need to have an electrical tile. And I kind of honestly would, at the time, I probably wouldn't have said it, but in retrospect, I think we need the electrical tile before we need a disease or poison tiles. Imagine if, like, this whole thing, like that, those aren't remotely symmetrical, but you get the idea. If we had like a bunch of electrical tiles, so you can't just park Sentinels wherever you want. Like if it was here and like here, maybe something like that. Hashtag just saying. But anyway, toys in the attic. I think there's potential for this map. I always like seeing new maps. We'll see what comes of it. All right, Chapeltown. Oh, by the way, Toys in the Attic, I will say, definitely a cool name. Definitely funny. Although it would have been cooler if they could have had like little oopsie babies around the map. Because that feels like creepy toys in the attic. Like, oh, you're at grandma's house and grandma has her toys upstairs. We'll go up in the attic and show you some of grandma's toys. And it's like these creepy porcelain dolls. There you go. Anyway, Chapeltown. Let's take a look at this map. So Chapeltown, large map. We've got only these. Notably, on these larger maps, we typically see multiple vaults. Only 2 on this map, so this is kind of interesting. Again, with the poison tiles, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 move to this, so you could swing in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, technically snowball or droney. You could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get snowball here. And then obviously snowball swings around. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panic points total. We have conveyor belts pointing you into here, which is very interesting. That will come up, but I'm not sure how or why. So here's my major initial thought. Is this a heart push map? Because you get in here, you're mixing it up, you're fighting whoever, and like stuff's here, and then you do this. And if your opponent didn't terraform this out of the way, are they just dead? You know what I mean? Like, because if you have a phobie like here, here, and here, even if they terraform, they have to move here and then like what? Move here? And just die? Like, that seems bad. I don't know. This could be... I'm getting... This might sting a little vibes from this map. I don't know if that's actually going to be true. Repeller on this map is probably going to be annoying because it could hang out here, or if you walk it up here somehow safely, presumably that's going to involve terraforming some of these. You get it to this point, you can cover here, and then you boop them back into these tiles. That's just going to be a pain in the balls to deal with. Like, that's going to be super annoying. You can put a 2-mover on the poison tile. Next turn, you capture your point. Then you put them on the conveyor with 1 action less. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I assume you're saying you capture this. And then you move here. So if it's a ranged guy, hypothetically, that could have value. Because you could hit 1, 2... Like, you could hit these tiles. I don't know how much that's going to matter. Like, it is something to keep in mind. But I don't know how often that's going to materially make a difference. I don't know how often that's going to make a difference. I kind of expect people to pop out with Gravediggers to start. Like, maybe break this. There's no real heebie-jeebie special potential here. I mean, like, if you block here, they have to take the scenic route, but they can come around. 3 Rangers. Again, Sentinels. They're going to be annoying because they can go here. Or here, and lock stuff off, or at least... Now, that being said, your opponent could... While the Sentinel is positioning here, if your opponent is set up for it, they could hypothetically collapse on it and blow them up, but that seems unlikely. By the way, the red on the green and pink here is making my own eyes hurt, so sorry, everybody. Terraform is interesting use without being a must-have here. Yeah, I think there's things you could do with Terraform. You do have this Coliseum-esque arena here where there's going to be a lot of violence happening here. What I picture happening is like there's going to be an Akira that walks up to like here. It pulls everything in, and you're going to have had a guy up here and down here, and then your opponent just gets obliterated. I like this ambience being used again since it was used twice before. What, for Chapeltown? Like, because this is the like and subscribe one. Hey, like and subscribe. I don't remember the... So, Opticon's not it. Because it's similar, but it's not the same. Scopoceum. Yeah, Scopoceum has that. It's really only those 2? I don't doubt you, because that sounds right, but... Either way, this looks interesting. It's definitely very strange. It's definitely very strange. There's a lot to take in on this one. I'm going to have to do some more in-depth. More on that later. Let's take a look at the other map, chat. This is the last map. We'll close out this part of the video, and then we'll hit up other stuff. But we're looking at Muso Meia. Maybe I'm mispronouncing that. So this one also notably, Karst has often pointed this out, that on the larger maps, the multi-vault maps tend to run into issues. I wonder if this is a reaction to that or the devs coming to the same conclusion. But notably, in the last 2 large maps, only single spawn points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is this 7 moves to get here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is another tile. Is it only 6? I can't tell because, like, it kind of blends. 2, 3, 4, 5. It might only be 6. It might only be 6. So, assuming it's 6, we can get, of course, snowballs and things like that to the center pretty safely. You can move lobbers here, I guess. I'm just kind of pointing out things as I see them. So you can defend this point. I think the more likely thing is to do a very weird and very slow terraform to crack this so that you can then, like, backdoor this panic point from your opponent over the course of the game. Because I could see them coming down here as player 2 and taking this and this, right? Because they could backfill the center. So, like, you take it with Snowball, you walk a 1 key, you walk a 1 key, maybe something else. And then you kind of split your triangles, so to speak. I don't know. It's technically impossible for a middle panic point to be 7 or more tiles away from the corner keyhole if no walls hinder movement. Sure. So compared to the small map, we do have stims that are 1, 2, 3. So that's going to cause some issues because parking a jar there is obviously a thing. We notably also have another Coliseum-style map where it's like, here's the death pit. I feel like stims are problematic. They absolutely are. The problem is that this stim is kind of protected. So it's not just that the stims are strategically placed so that they are relevant to the main combat area, right? Like, this is where everything happens, or potentially going to happen. However, the problem is that it's also kind of protected. You can't just get at this. You either have to have lobbers or you have to have something swing around. And that is way more difficult because odds are your opponent has bodies in the way. You can't droney jump scare things. There are going to be plays here where you can boop the heart and then, like, end up with something here somehow, I think. I see Hevo 2.0 help me a lot. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I was going. Like, either repositioning your opponent, possibly dumping them into the abyss. Disease tiles or disease tiles. The way they're positioned, I don't think the disease tiles are going to matter as much. Like, you don't necessarily have to be, like, I'm all in on mech. Obviously helps. We didn't talk about this on the other ones, but this could be is this a Blom map? I could see a world in which it is. But this is going to be a displacement focused map, right? Less so because of the disease tiles. A little bit more because there are abyss tiles, but there aren't that many. I think it's more going to be a displacement focused map because otherwise I'm not sure how you make anything happen. I anticipate this map is going to result in some... I know I was saying other maps earlier, but I'm kind of thinking Rush Hour on this one. There aren't lava tiles to, like, discourage people otherwise, but it definitely feels like once somebody gets this concave or this one, and you can shoot this way, you're going to need an Omega or a Brony or anything like that in order to launch the offensive. What do you do as player 2? I expect a lot of people, and I know this isn't, we're getting to it, so stay with me. I expect a lot of people to go Snowball initially, and then Snowball is going to peel off. As player 2, you could go, let's see, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You may get shot at by Snowball here, but then that means they don't take a panic point. You could just leave it here, and then you swing it into backfill. Like, I picture you go probably 1 key, 1 key, 2 key. You end up getting these relatively safe, and then you're just fighting over this. That's kind of what I anticipate is going to happen. Like, is player 2 at a disadvantage? Possibly. 2, 3. So if they open Snowball, I don't think the openers here will be significantly different than, say, Vile Vortis. Because you had the one center panic point that player 1 pretty much always took, except for in more recent times where Carson and a number of other players have tried to open up with other things. And then you had your standard. So if on Vile Vortis, they go Snowball 1 key, or Snowball and then into Crushmore or something like that. And player 2, you went 1 key, Cassowary, or something like that. And then it sets you up in order to be able to transition into whatever. I kind of expect that's how this is going to play out. Like, if they go Snowball whatever, they can't, like, stop you from taking these. So you're not going to be down like 1 million panic points. And if they march an Innocuous up, it's here. It's not like you're not going to have time to react to it. Maybe as player 2, you have to break this obstacle, which then does expose the stem more. The reason I say that is it just gives you more surface area to work with to try and stage something, because otherwise you're running through this choke, which we've all seen on Red Rum since the launch of the game, where if you get funneled back and pushed back into that choke, it's kind of impossible for you to ever get out from there. And then plus, in this case, your opponent has angles on the heart. So if they're here, you can't safely advance into them, and they can target your heart down. This will be interesting. Huh. You might go look at some of the games, see if, like the Alien Engineers and stuff of the world have already played on this map and see what happened there. We'll have to see, chat. Well, that is the initial thoughts for this particular patch. We looked at the phobies, we looked at the maps, but I'm curious what everybody else's thoughts are out there in YouTube land. We're here on the live stream. The link, of course, for that you can find in the description of this video, down by the like and subscribe button. That's also where you can hit up the Random Thoughts Discord. You're going to hear about tournaments there first, including Monster of the Week, our weekly tournament series that does provide coffee just for showing up and playing. We also have Ace Shriek going, which is our async tournament series. No prizes for that, but it is just for fun because in both events, everything's set to level 1 and gives you the opportunity to test your luck on a more level playing field. But like I said, let me know what your thoughts are for patch 1.10. I'm very excited. I love the theme. I love the look of the phobies. Once again, shout out to the entire team and especially the art team because they knocked it out of the park once again. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching and tune in next time for more Random Thoughts.